Stranded in the Delta Quadrant for almost 6 years, the writers of Star Trek Voyager needed a Season 5 cliffhanger, but had no clue what to do for it. But with the spark of an idea, the Equinox two-parter would be born, creating 2 magnificent episodes that finally showed fandom what Voyager truly could have been. But what's the story behind this epic odyssey? Well, today we'll find out. Hello and welcome to Backtrack, a web series that focuses on the background information of any given topic in Star Trek. In this episode, we're taking a look at Star Trek Voyager's 2-part episode Equinox, to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Season 5 of Star Trek Voyager had been a long and grueling season for the production staff. With 25 episodes to the season, along with some ambitious episodes, the writers of the show were absolutely exhausted, with no clue whatsoever as to how they wanted to end the season. Rick Berman wanted a cliffhanger, which was the general tradition of the various series since Season 3 of Star Trek The Next Generation, and wanted a cliffhanger in a similar vein to that of the Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2, to bring fandom back to the show in droves for Season 6. But he had one caveat: no Borg. The story for Equinox was a collaborative effort by Rick Berman, Brannon Braga, and Joe Menosky. The seed for the story came from Braga himself, as he recalls, "I had this image of a ship of people who were stuck in the Delta Quadrant almost as long as we have been, maybe a bit longer, but they have not responded in the same way. They've done some very, very bad things, including mass murder." Berman loved this workable idea, but Joe Menosky didn't, as he confessed. "I just had no hope for it at all. I had the feeling of elements stitched together without a driving point of view, with a haphazard and clunky structure of story. One thing this did have going for us is that it had 4 major speaking roles, and as a result we could have some interesting character dynamics. You could follow threaded character arcs in a way that felt bigger than a single episode." Funnily enough, Equinox was not written in the traditional way that most of the Star Trek episodes had always been written. Because of time constraints, instead of sitting down and outlining the story, batting it back and forth in the writer's room, and eventually writing it, Braga and Menosky simply just wrote it with no clue where the story was headed. Instead, they would write a scene and then think what would be cool to come next, and proceed to write the next scene, and eventually the 2-parter would take shape. A little bit of Trek trivia for you all here is in regards to the USS Equinox itself. Though appearing as a new starship, the truth was that the Equinox sets were simply redresses of the sets used as the USS Prometheus in Voyager Season 4 episode Message in a Bottle, all slightly altered to simulate a new starship class, while adding the effect of extreme damage to let the audience know that this ship had not led the charmed life that Voyager had. Even before writing began on the episode, the production staff knew they needed a strong captain opposite Janeway, and immediately offered the role to John Savage. Savage is well known for his breakthrough role as Steven in the classic 1978 war drama The Deer Hunter, as well as many appearances on television, which included The X-Files and, of course, Tales from the Crypt. Savage immediately accepted the role, as he explains, "They needed a captain. They didn't have a story yet, and I was excited. It evolved, and every day a new set of pages came along with it. I found Ransom to have quite an interesting moral struggle in the story. It wasn't a simple one, and it was very supported." The role of First Officer Maxwell Burke would fall to Titus Welliver. Not knowing if he wanted to do the role or not, he was finally convinced when he found out John Savage was playing Captain Ransom, as Welliver was a longtime fan of the actor. Welliver has had a long and extensive acting career, having 110 acting credits to his name, and is still acting today. and Welliver really enjoyed his time on Voyager, he remembers, "My first day of work on Equinox, I thought, I've waited close to 30 years to be on a Star Trek set, and here I am. I was like a little kid in a candy shop. I just wish I had as much fun on all my jobs as I did on this one." Olivia Birkeland would ride the turbolift to Voyager as Marla Gilmore. Birkeland's acting credits are not extensive as those of Savage or Welliver, having only 26 credits to her name, but she has had some pretty hefty reoccurring roles, including that of Arlene Dillon Chandler on the American soap opera All My Children, and various roles on Law and Order and Law and Order's Special Victims Unit. Her last acting gig was in 2017 in Coin Heist. And finally, Rick Worthy would beam on board the Voyager set as Noah Lessing. Rick is no stranger to science fiction, appearing as a Cylon model in the updated Battlestar Galactica, but he also was no stranger to Star Trek specifically. Worthy appeared as Automated Unit 3947 and Automated Commander 122 from Voyager's episode Prototype, also the Klingon weapons officer Kornan, son of Shavak from the Deep Space Nine episode Soldiers of the Empire, and also played Janar, the Xindi Arboreal from Season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. He was even an Elorian officer in the Star Trek movie Insurrection, and is still acting today with 69 credits to his name. David Livingston would direct this two-parter. In total, Livingston would direct 62 episodes of Star Trek, starting with 2 episodes of The Next Generation, 17 episodes of Deep Space Nine, 28 episodes of Voyager, and 15 episodes of Enterprise. But for Livingston, the Equinox two-parter was a difficult shoot. He explains, "It was a long shooting schedule. It was very difficult, because a lot of it was with no lights. There are 4 sequences where we go to visit their ship, finding people dead or dying. Those were all shot with palm beacons, and a lot of sparks and smoke and nitrogen. It was tough on the crew, especially for the last episode, because everybody was so tired and burnt out after such a long and grueling season." Equinox was also an ambitious episode for visual effects. The nucleogenic lifeforms were designed by Pacific Ocean Post, and was rendered by Santa Barbara Studios. The starship Equinox, eventually belonging to the Nova class, was designed by senior illustrator Rick Sternbach and visualized by Digital Muse. Personally, I love the Nova class, as I think it shows the new evolved direction Starship Lineage was taking at the time. You can clearly see Intrepid and Sovereign class elements in the design. Reception for this two-parter was quite high. Both fandom and production staffers alike really enjoyed these episodes, and so did I. But it was a double-edged sword, as Equinox presented us with a view of what Voyager could have been, similar to that of another two-parter, Year of Hell. Seeing a story where Janeway was becoming unhinged not because of bad writing, but this time because of good writing, was very refreshing. And to see a captain like Ransom, willing to do whatever it took to get his crew home, was similarly a breath of fresh air. It allowed fandom to do what Star Trek made us do best, have conversations about the events, making us ask the question like, if we were put in this position, would we be like Ransom or like Janeway? The debate between the two captains over Ransom's actions is some of the best writing in Star Trek, because you can completely understand Ransom's position, and Janeway comes off as a sanctimonious and unrealistic captain. And then the episode is weaved in such a way that by the end, when Ransom switches sides and reminds Janeway of what it is to be a Starfleet captain, sacrificing himself in the best hero tradition of Star Trek itself, you also sympathize with Janeway's plight. And still to this day, the debate rages on. The truth is, of course, the genocide of an entire species is not an admirable way to get home, and truly is not a justified reason for any Starfleet captain to get their crew home. Yet we also see that Janeway's Starfleet principles above all else philosophy equally has its flaws, as I'm sure the many dead and who would die in future episodes could attest to. I think Equinox shows that neither side was right in their actions. Sure, morally Janeway gets the points, but the character needed to have some more of Ransom in her, a willingness to break Starfleet rules more often, when it would simply result in minor moral quandaries in the interest of her crew, more of a middle ground if you will. But of course, after this two-parter, Janeway would return to the captain that we all knew, and I think that was one of the biggest missed opportunities of the series. Here we had Captain Janeway going nuts, and then being reminded of what a Starfleet captain truly was, by someone who had committed a severe unforgivable act, and next week, she hadn't learned a darn thing from that experience. The Equinox two-parter could have been a soft reboot for the character, correcting all the flaws and contradictions that the previous seasons of Voyager had instilled in the Janeway character. But instead, Voyager went back to business as usual, and viewership numbers continued to decline. The Equinox two-parter was an adventure of epic scope, a true example of what Star Trek can accomplish at its best, earning Equinox its well-deserved place in Star Trek history.
2 Starfleet captains.
Who attacked you?
We don't know.
1 terrible secret.
Interspatial fissures are opening on decks 10, 6, and 1.
No way out.
I think you know the reason we're under attack.
It's a Voyager season finale
If you don't stop what you're doing, we'll both be destroyed.
that won't slow down
Janeway to 7 and 9.
until the final moment
They're breaking through!
of an unforgettable showdown.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Backtrack. What do you think of the Equinox two-parter? Would you rate it as one of Star Trek Voyager's best Trek outings? Well, leave your comments in the section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help the channel find a quicker way home? Then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Live long and prosper.